While our military fights concurrent wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, the United States Congress is still working on sifting through the fallout from the last Gulf War. The 1991 war was shorter and thankfully claimed many fewer lives than the current conflict there. But there were American prisoners of war who were held captive and tortured by Saddam Hussein's forces. 17 of them have been trying to sue the Iraqi government for damages. A 1996 law says a state sponsor of terror can be sued, and Iraq was listed as a state sponsor of terror when the POWs and hostages were held. Still, the Bush administration, our own government, has opposed the efforts of American POWs to sue Iraq for their torture because, as the president said in a statement last year, quote, exposing Iraq to such significant financial burdens would weaken the close relationship, the close partnership between the United States and Iraq during this critical period in Iraq's history. This week, the House of Representatives passed a bill that would take away the president's power to insulate Iraq from this lawsuit. President Bush is threatening to veto that bill in order to keep American POWs from suing the people who tortured them. One of those prisoners of war joins us now, Colonel David Eberly, retired from the United States Air Force. He was the senior-ranking Allied prisoner of war in Iraq in 1991, where he was held for 43 days. Colonel Eberly, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for allowing me to bring this once again to the public.
I have read in reading about your story that in your 43 days in captivity, you were starved, essentially. You lost 45 pounds while you were held captive by Saddam Hussein's regime. That, among other things, is a flagrant violation of the rules by which the Geneva Conventions say POWs have to be treated. Can you tell me what happened to you, what sort of conditions you and other Gulf War POWs faced in Iraq in 1991?
Yes, let me first thank Congressman Bruce Braley and Congressman Joe Sestak for championing this through the Congress. They reached across the aisle, and Monday night late, it was approved. This bill was approved by unanimous voice vote. So thank you very much. Now, let me talk about not just personally, but there were many aspects that violated the Geneva Convention. I'll just list a few of these. There's several hundred pages that detail the violations of the Geneva Convention. Those can be summarized with electric shock treatment, chemical injections to alter the mind, broken bones, mock executions, and then, of course, we were used as propaganda tools. All 5 of these are clear violations of the Geneva Convention that Iraq was a signatory to.
What led you to the decision, you and other POWs, to the decision to sue the Iraqi government over that treatment?
We believe that by bringing this onto the world stage, we can cause future governments that hold United States Americans as hostage, we can deter future torture by those countries.
You and 16 other Gulf War prisoners of war were actually awarded damages by a U.S. federal court 5 years ago in this case. And
that's correct.
That award, as far as I understand it, was then blocked by our government. And again, last year, when a provision to allow your lawsuit to move forward was attached to a military spending bill, President Bush, in essence, vetoed it. How does it feel to be fighting your own government on this?
Well, it's a sorry situation. Yes, in 2002 we brought the suit. The United States District Court in Washington awarded, they determined the amount. They made an award, and then shortly thereafter the administration through the Department of Justice appealed that. We lost the appeal in the appeals court, tried to take it to the Supreme Court. The ironic thing about this is that at the same time the administration was fighting this particular action, they were in fact supporting and are now supporting foreign companies, the boardrooms of foreign companies, to the tune of $20 to $30 billion so that they can recover damages from the government of Iraq. And also, it is a situation that they have ignored this debt of honor. The amount of money involved now is actually pennies on the dollar. What the bill calls for is a settlement that amounts to 1% of the interest that Iraq currently earns with the funds that they have on deposit in the United States. It's almost shameful to compare the amount of money as having any impact on the government of Iraq's ability to move forward in their own country.
Colonel David Eberly, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you for your service, and good luck to you, sir.
Thank you.
So why is the Bush administration intent on keeping men like Colonel Eberly from collecting damages from a country in which they were starved and tortured? Joining us now, a man who was just thanked on this program, one of President Bush's prime adversaries in this battle, Representative Bruce Braley, Democrat of Iowa. He sponsored the POW legislation, which passed the House on Monday night. If it becomes law, it would strip the president of his ability to exempt Iraq from lawsuits from former POWs and hostages. Congressman Braley, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Rachel.
When you first announced you would be submitting this bill, the legal battle was already entrenched between the Bush administration and the POWs who were trying to sue Iraq for torturing them back in 1991. This has been going on for 5 years. What got you involved in this?
Well, what got me involved was the very clear memories of the images of these tortured POWs during the Gulf War, and then something that should shock and outrage every American citizen, which was a 60 Minutes piece that I saw in 2003 describing how our president, George Bush, was placing a greater priority on transferring the assets that could have been used to pay these tortured POWs and human shields and using them to rebuild the oil fields in Iraq that had been destroyed during Operation Iraqi Freedom. And then as I followed this and have met and had a chance to learn more about the amazing stories of these tortured heroes and the POWs and their families, this is the type of thing that should shock and outrage every American, and that's why Congressman Sestak and I have fought so hard to restore this right.
Well, I want to say what the White House explains about what they're doing here. They say they oppose allowing these former POWs, these heroes, to sue the Iraqi government because it would open Iraq up to billions of dollars in lawsuits for crimes committed under the old regime. They've also cited the fact that Iraq threatened to pull assets out of the U.S. if we allow these American citizens to sue the Iraqi government. We just heard that addressed in part by Colonel Eberly. But what about you? Do you buy those arguments?
These claims are bogus and absurd. What this bill would do is actually eliminate all known claims of American POWs and human shields because Iraq is no longer labeled as a state sponsor of terrorism. And one of the threshold things you have to prove to recover under this law that Congress passed in a bipartisan way in 1996 is that you were tortured by a state sponsor of terrorism, which Saddam Hussein's Iraq was at the time, but the government of Iraq is no more.
Congressman Bruce Braley, thank you for joining us and helping us bring this issue to light. I think we're going to be hearing a lot more about this. Thanks for your efforts.
I hope so. Thank you, Rachel.
One of the things that's going on here is that as a signatory to the Geneva Convention, we are forbidden from absolving any country from any liability for torturing a POW ever. And, of course, the fact that much of this torture of American POWs in Iraq in 1991 happened in Abu Ghraib prison is not lost on history, and it should not be lost on us as we understand the political context here.